I work in this site for many years. These warriors are all life-sized, like real soldiers.
For more than 50 years, the Terracotta Army has been presented to the world as a triumph of ancient craftsmanship, an unparalleled display of artistry, organization, and imperial ambition. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with unique facial features and posture, standing in disciplined formation beneath the soil of Shaanxi Province. For generations, the site has been framed as a monument to power and unity, a silent honor guard created to accompany China's first emperor into the afterlife. But that narrative was incomplete. In 2025, a convergence of archaeological data, chemical analysis, and subsurface imaging forced researchers to confront a far darker interpretation. What scientists uncovered did not merely refine our understanding of the Terracotta Army, it fundamentally altered it. The army, it turns out, may never have been intended as a symbolic display at all. It may have been something far more calculated and far more dangerous. The story begins, as it always has, in the spring of 1974. Farmers digging a well near modern-day Xi'an struck fragments of baked clay. At first, the pieces seemed unremarkable, but as excavation widened, rows of human figures emerged, standing shoulder to shoulder, frozen in time. They were not crude. They were astonishingly detailed. Armor plates fit together precisely. Hairstyles varied by rank. Expressions conveyed focus, discipline, and resolve. These were not representations of soldiers. They were soldiers rendered in clay. Archaeologists soon realized the scale of what lay underground. More than 8,000 warriors, along with horses, chariots, acrobats, officials, and musicians, arranged across multiple pits. All of them faced east, as if guarding the empire's frontier. The army belonged to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China in the 3rd century BCE, a ruler known for monumental projects, centralized authority, and ruthless control. At first, the interpretation was straightforward. The emperor, obsessed with immortality, commissioned a clay army to protect him in death. The site became a global symbol of ancient ingenuity and ambition. But as excavation continued over the decades, troubling anomalies began to surface. One of the earliest was the condition of the weapons. Bronze swords, spearheads, and arrow tips recovered from the pits showed almost no corrosion despite being buried for over 2,000 years. Many retained sharp edges. Metallurgists initially believed they had discovered an ancient form of chrome plating, technology thought to be invented only in the 20th century. Later analysis complicated that conclusion. The chromium did not appear to have been intentionally applied to the weapons. Instead, it originated from the surrounding soil and lacquer used on wooden components. Under specific environmental conditions, this interaction created a protective chromium oxide layer. The result looked like advanced metallurgy, but the process itself raised new questions. Why did the soil chemistry behave so uniformly across such a vast area? Why were preservation conditions so consistent? Those questions led researchers to test the ground itself. What they found unsettled even seasoned scientists. Soil samples taken from multiple pits revealed abnormally high concentrations of mercury, far beyond natural background levels. This discovery echoed descriptions written over 2 millennia ago by the historian Sima Qian, who claimed the emperor's tomb contained rivers and seas of flowing mercury designed to replicate the geography of China. For years, those passages were treated as metaphor. In 2025, they could no longer be dismissed. Advanced geochemical surveys showed mercury concentrations hundreds of times higher than global averages, not only near the central burial mound, which remains unopened, but also in areas surrounding the Terracotta Army itself. Mercury vapor traces were detected in subsurface voids, sealed chambers, and ventilation-like shafts running beneath the pits. This was not incidental contamination, it was distribution. At the same time, excavations in Pit 2 yielded new discoveries that sharpened the picture. A rare high-ranking general figure emerged, larger and more elaborately armored than surrounding soldiers, positioned alongside officers and cavalry in a formation that mirrored real Qin military hierarchy. The arrangement was tactical, not decorative. It suggested command structures frozen in place. But the most disturbing findings came from beneath the statues. Core samples revealed sealed ceramic canisters buried below certain figures, containing residues of arsenic compounds mixed with cinnabar, a mercury-based mineral. These substances were not symbolic offerings, they were chemically active. In modern terms, they form a toxic cocktail capable of persisting in soil and air for centuries. The pattern was unmistakable. Toxins were not confined to the emperor's central tomb. They were embedded throughout the outer complex, where the army stood guard. By early 2025, international research teams from China, Germany, and the United Kingdom began comparing data across multiple pits. Chromium behavior, mercury vapor distribution, arsenic residues, underground airflow pathways. When layered together, the findings converged on a single, unsettling conclusion. The Terracotta Army was not just a ceremonial honor guard. It was part of a deliberately engineered deterrent system. Ground-penetrating radar revealed networks of sealed corridors and hollow chambers beneath and between the pits. Some appeared to function as ventilation channels, allowing air and potentially vaporized toxins to circulate. From an engineering perspective, this made little sense for a static tomb unless airflow itself served a purpose. One purpose, increasingly difficult to ignore: to spread poison. Internal reports, later leaked to academic circles, described the necropolis as a contained toxic zone. A space designed not merely to preserve the emperor's resting place, but to punish intrusion. Over centuries, mercury slowly vaporized. Arsenic compounds leached into surrounding soil. The environment itself became hostile. This reframed decades of official hesitation to open the emperor's tomb. Publicly, authorities had long stated that excavation technology was not yet advanced enough to preserve fragile artifacts. Privately, researchers now acknowledged a different concern. Opening sealed chambers could release concentrated toxins trapped underground for over 2,000 years. The risk was not theoretical. Archaeological workers over the years had reported unexplained dizziness, nosebleeds, fatigue, and respiratory issues, symptoms often attributed to heat or stress. In retrospect, some scientists believe these may have been early signs of low-level exposure. In 2025, access restrictions around certain pits quietly increased. Excavation permits were delayed or suspended. Environmental safety specialists were brought in. Hazard ratings were assigned to zones previously considered safe. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. The Terracotta Army was no longer just an archaeological site. It was a potential biohazard. This realization forced a re-evaluation of Qin Shi Huang himself. Already remembered as a brutal unifier who burned books, buried scholars alive, and ruled through fear, he now appeared as something more extreme. A ruler so obsessed with control that he extended it beyond death, weaponizing his own tomb against the future. The symbolism of the army took on a new meaning. The soldiers were not simply guarding the emperor in the afterlife. They were standing watch over a lethal perimeter, a warning encoded in clay and poison. When a sealed joint Chinese-European report circulated in early 2025, its conclusion was blunt. The mystery of the Terracotta Army had been solved, and the answer was deeply unsettling. What had been admired as a masterpiece of ancient art was also a feat of early chemical engineering, designed to endure, to deter, and to dominate time itself. The global response was divided. Some scholars urged caution, warning against projecting modern fears onto ancient practices. Others argued the data was too consistent, too systematic to ignore. Chinese authorities did not deny the findings. They simply declined to comment. That silence spoke volumes. Today, visitors still walk past the silent ranks of clay soldiers. The awe remains, but it is now tempered by something else: awareness. The understanding that beneath those figures lies not just history, but intent. The emperor's central tomb remains sealed, and with what scientists now know, the question is no longer why it has not been opened. The question is whether it ever should be.